Welcome to Playing Above the Line's very first mini-series. I'm Alan, your host, and this episode is one of 10 we're recording with T.R. Miller's legendary football coach, Jamie Riggs. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group, a business consulting and accounting firm focused on preparing clients for the future through innovation and positive growth. Thank you to the Brewton Area YMCA for sponsoring this week's episode. The YMCA helps to build strong families and communities by developing character, building self-esteem, and inspiring hope through youth sports, childcare, swim lessons, Y Summer Camp, and many other programs and services. Come by to tour the facilities at 1635 Belleville Avenue in Brewton, or visit www.brewtonareaymca.com to learn more.
This story is entitled The Craziest Thing I Ever Did, and it was crazy. It turned out really good. Back in the early 2000s there, we were in between softball coaches, and I decided that I was going to coach girls softball. So I thought, it's just coaching. I know the girls are different and all that kind of stuff, but it won't be a big deal. I'll roll in there and I'll do it like this and so forth. And I just want to tell y'all I didn't have a clue. And it was totally different from anything I had done. Actually, the girls were terrific, and they understood me. They understood me a lot more than I understood them. We kind of got along, and I did that for about 3 years and all. But anyway, after I retired and sat down one day, I was writing some stuff, and I started thinking about that, and I wrote this one, which is called The Craziest Thing I Ever Did.
Well, Coach, I'm excited about this one because if anyone listened to the episode that we did with you originally back in February, episode number 113, you touched on this little experience a little bit, and so I'm very excited to hear this fleshed out and to hear exactly how your tenure with these girls went.
Okay, so again, this is called The Craziest Thing I Ever Did. It was late March of 2016, and I was cleaning out my office as I had retired from my job as athletic director and head football coach at T.R. Miller. You can gather a lot of things in 27 years, and I had quite a few boxes. I had plaques and letters and pictures that took me back to some great days and years gone by. But the last thing I packed had nothing to do with high school football. Sometimes in life we do these things that we really can't explain. I don't know exactly what I was thinking about 15 years ago, but surely I had a good reason for getting involved. In athletics, we have so many decisions to make that eventually you miss on some of them. But for whatever the reason, I decided in 2003 to coach the T.R. Miller girls softball team, to the shock and dismay of many people, including much of the softball team, their parents, and most of the city of Brewton. Looking back on it, I can tell you that of all the crazy things I've done in my life, this was by far the best one. I had never coached girls, but I figured it wouldn't be that different from coaching the guys. I was completely wrong about that. But maybe the best thing about the whole deal was that although I didn't understand them at all, I believe they completely understood everything about me. They accepted me. They tolerated me. And I think that at times they even liked having me around. In order to understand this story completely, you must understand the makeup of my coaching staff. Paul Smith was my assistant coach. Now, Paul was one of the most mild-mannered, truly nice people I've ever come to know until you start a girls' softball game. Then he became a crazy man. I remember looking at him one day as he was yelling at one of our outfielders thinking, who is this person? Our pitching coach was Cop Walker, the local baby doctor himself. In addition to coaching the pitchers, apparently I assigned him the job of yelling at the umpires. Sometimes after a bad call, he would just scream, you've got to be kidding me. I would tell the umpire in between innings, hey, ignore that guy. He's our team doctor. I remember standing in the dugout and hearing Cop talking on the phone and asking, how far along is she? We're in the 5th inning. I'll be there in a few minutes. One of the girls heard that and asked me, is someone having a baby? Like any good coach, I had a quick answer. Apparently not until after the game, I said. The final guy on our coaching staff was Terrell Neal. Terrell had been involved with softball since his oldest daughter, Rebecca, had started playing. She was one of our pitchers and was very competitive. Terrell loved just being around and would do anything we needed him to do, from hitting ground balls to carrying the equipment. In those days, the batting cages were chain link, and when you hit a ball on top of them, you had to climb up there to get it off. So during the game, someone would hit a foul ball up there, and Terrell would bolt from the dugout, climb on top, and get it. The first game the year after Rebecca graduated, Terrell was not in the dugout with us. They had a foul ball on top of the batting cage, and Paul looked at me, and I looked at Paul, and he looked at me, and I looked back at him, and I said, "What happened to that ball boy we had last year?" I even had a field guy. Randy Salter's daughter, Hannah, was a left-handed hitting center fielder for us, and Randy worked at the YMCA where we played, and he would do the field for us. It was immaculate. All I had to do was just show up and coach. Now, it didn't take me long to learn there are some differences between the guys and the girls. We needed a catcher, so I informed one of our infielders that we were going to move her to catcher. Terry Lynn looked at me and said, "I don't want to play catcher." Now, this was new territory for me. Most of the guys wouldn't say something like that out of fear of the amount of running that they would be doing. To be honest, I think it hurt my ego just a little bit that she had no fear of me. But I accepted this challenge immediately. I said, "Well, here's the deal. I'll let you choose. You can play catcher and bat third, or you can play infield and sit on the bench every game. It's your choice." She stuck out both of her lips, turned around, and walked off. Apparently, she went home and told her mother on me, who suggested she get used to catcher's equipment. Terry Lynn came back the next day and played catcher, crying for most of the practice. She refused to speak to me. Having been married for quite a few years, I recognized this as her way of telling me that she was mad. But she became a terrific catcher and made us a much better team. And eventually she started speaking to me once again, but it took a while. Our first major crisis was about hair ribbons. Everyone had to decide to wear a red ribbon or bow, except one player who didn't want to wear one. So I asked my wife, Becky, what should I do? Asking my wife for coaching advice was also uncharted territory. She said that the girl's hair wasn't long enough for a bow and she shouldn't have to wear one. "What are you going to do?" she said. I decided to do what any red-blooded American male would do when faced with a female situation like that. "I'm going to ignore it and hope it goes away," I said. Another thing I learned in a hurry was that if you wanted to know what was going on at T.R. Miller High School, just stand close as they were throwing to warm up every day, because they talked about everything. Teachers, their families, guys, who they liked and didn't like, and it was pretty interesting. Okay, back to crying. I would pitch to them in the batting cages a lot behind the screen. So one day a girl came in to hit, and I could tell she'd been crying. I didn't know if I needed to say anything, so I just kind of ignored it and hoped it would go away. Another girl came to the cage, and I whispered, "Why is she crying?" I was informed that she had broken up with her boyfriend that day. "Should I say something about it?" I asked. I got this look from her like, "You have got to be the dumbest man anywhere." I immediately recognized this look, as I must have asked a similar question of my wife before. "No, don't say anything. She will be okay." And the next day she was fine. Before the first game, one of the parents said, "We usually bring some food and set up for the girls to eat before and after the game. Is that okay?" "Sounds good to me," I said. The next day at the game, we had food everywhere. Paul said, "You really need to go down there and try some of that divinity." I said, "What?" He said, "Somebody's grandmother made some white divinity with pecans in it, and boy, it's good. You need to try some of that." I looked at Paul and said, "We normally don't eat like divinity before football games," and he just laughed. "And you might want to get some of those chocolate-covered strawberries before they're all gone," he said. And I really like chocolate-covered strawberries, so I hurried over and got me a couple. Early in the year, we played a team that had a group of bigger, athletic-looking girls. They really looked like softball players. Their coach was a lady, and she told me, "The problem with your team is you got too many cheerleaders and majorettes playing." And she laughed. I think she was trying to insult me, but in true male fashion, I really didn't recognize it as an insult. "You're right," I said. "You will probably win the softball game, but we will blow your doors off at the Junior Miss Pageant." And then I laughed. Now, I let Coach Smith make the schedule, and I gave him some very explicit instructions. First, never schedule a game on Monday. Just like many workers in America who have difficulty doing their job on Monday after the weekend, girls tend to be a little sluggish on the first day of the school week. One year he scheduled a game against Jay on a Monday. It was the only day they could play, Paul said. We went down to play, and we got beat badly. When we got on the bus to go home, Paul looked at me and said, "This is my fault. I should have known that they had a big weekend and wouldn't be ready to play on Monday without a day of practice." I gave him a smile, put my arm around his shoulder, and said, "Yes, Paul, It's absolutely your fault. Now you need to apologize to the girls and promise never to do it again. The other rule I had was that we should only play one Saturday tournament. So early in the year, we scheduled a tournament in Andalusia. We drew an 8 a.m. game. So we had the girls report to school at 6 a.m. We gave them a little breakfast and then loaded them on the bus. I noticed that one of our pitchers looked kind of bad, like maybe she got in real late and had not had much sleep. She slept all the way to Andalusia, and when we got off the bus, I smiled at her and I said, "Hey, by the way, you're pitching the first game." And I gave her a big old smile. She wasn't smiling. We were playing Northview out of Dothan, a much bigger school, and they were better than us. She held in there pretty good for a few innings, and I was kind of proud of her. About the fifth or sixth inning, they finally ripped a few hits and got several runs. She looked at me from the mound. I recognized that look from being married for a while. That look meant, you need to do something about this right now. More specifically, it meant she wanted me to put someone else in the pitch. I just yelled at her from the dugout, "Hey, I'm not taking you out, so you might as well get tough and get them out or we're going to be here all day." She gave me a look that I recognized immediately. All men know what that look means. The second year I coached, we played better and better as the year went by. We made most of the routine plays, got good pitching and catching, hit the ball much better. By this time, I had learned the importance of bunting, and Haley Reeling was a left-handed batter and a really quick runner. We worked on her drag bunting. She got really good. Her speed put a lot of pressure on the pitcher, and the defense would throw it away about half the time. She stayed on base a lot. We won the area tournament, beat Abbeville in the next round, and we had to play a good team from Montgomery Catholic in a 2-out-of-3 series where the winner would go to the state tournament. We played on a Saturday in Bruton, had a great crowd. We won 2-0 and 2-1 as our pitchers, Rebecca Neal and Hallie Ellis, completely shut them down, and our fielders scooped up everything. To the amazement of everyone, T.R. Miller was headed to the state softball tournament in Montgomery for the very first time. The day before we were going to Montgomery, we had one last practice, and I had permission for us to practice over at the softball field at the junior college. After practice, I gave each of them a handwritten note from me, thanking them for what they had done, not only for softball, but for our girls' athletic program. I remember telling them that one day our girls' team would be great year after year and that we could look back and know that it all started with this team. I thanked them for their courage and let them know how proud the school was of them. We lost the first game at the state tournament to Danville and then had to play an elimination game against West Blockton. I remember it was rainy and we played extra innings before losing the second game 9-8. I was very, very proud of them because they had become a true team, not just a bunch of girls playing softball. The next year we had another good team. We had always had a really difficult time beating Andalusia. We practiced so hard before our game with them and then handed to Andalusia to take them on. We didn't play particularly well and lost something like 7-1. Everyone was disappointed with our performance. The girls were mad and they had their lips poked out as we headed for the bus. They loaded up and they were not saying a word. Having been married for a while, I immediately recognized this as a dangerous situation. I had seen that look on their faces before. As a coach, you must know when to get on your team and when to encourage them. I remember saying, "I know how important this game was to you. You put in a lot of practice and time and emotion into playing Andalusia, but sometimes in life, you work hard and you do the right things, but you're still disappointed. It's just part of competition. It's part of life. But I promise there will be a better day." They still had these big frowns of disappointment on their faces, and I recognized that look. I knew how to fix that one, but I want you to know that we're still really proud of you, I said. "Now, let's go to Sonic and get us something to eat. I'm buying." And with that, they all smiled, started cheering, and started talking again. I was finally getting the hang of coaching the girls. While we were eating, we looked up and saw Brad Lanham coming across the street. He was playing baseball for the junior college in Andalusia. He happened to be at the grocery store across the street there and recognized the bus. This was big because I'm guessing about 100% of the girls' softball team thought he was cute. He came over and we all sat there and talked for a while. I remember thinking how much fun everyone was having, just a bunch of Miller kids talking ball and school and friends and Bruton, and of course, eating ice cream. One day during softball season, a couple of my football players approached me and they said that they thought that I treated the girls a lot better than I treated the football players. "That's completely right," I said. "Do you want me to tell you why?" They both could see from my tone and the look on my face that they probably should not have entered into this conversation with me. They had seen this look from me before. First of all, they try harder every day, win or lose. Whether they have a good day or a bad day, doesn't make any difference. They try hard. Second, they don't whine when things don't go their way like you guys do. And third, they're just a lot tougher than y'all are. You ought to be thankful they don't play football, or you would probably be sitting on the bench. The guys just looked at me and said, yes, sir, and walked off. I never had any football players approach me about softball again. We won the area tournament again that spring and went to Montgomery to play Catholic one more time for the right to go to the state tournament. We lost, and the season was over. I gathered them together and told them it was time for them to have a real softball coach instead of this old football coach. I was honest when I told them that I had loved every minute working with them. It was one of the best things that I had done. We shed a few tears, and I could see they were hurt and disappointed. I recognized that look, and I knew how to fix it. We took them all to Applebee's to eat, and they had a great time. A few weeks later, we hired Greg White as our softball coach. He did a terrific job for a long time with our team. Today, these young ladies have gone on to do many great things. They're wives and mothers, and many have important jobs in many different places. They're hardworking, essential to their families, and to their communities. Occasionally, I run into one of them somewhere, and I love catching up with them. When people ask me sometimes about my players, they're always talking about football. But these young ladies from a decade ago are every bit as much my players as any footballer. They had courage and they had great work ethic. They represent our school with great sportsmanship and pride. I can truly say that they taught me much more than I ever taught them. They made me a better coach and taught me to have a little more compassion occasionally. I wish I could list all their names, but I would surely forget someone. But most of all, we had a great time. It had been on my wall since 2004, and for some reason, I left it there to the very end. I finally packed it away in the last box. It was a plaque with the state tournament team's picture and their record and their names. People will always remember me as a football coach at Miller and associate me with great games, great season, great players. I consider myself very lucky, but I never had more fun than coaching the softball team at T.R. Miller High School, the best crazy thing I ever did.
Coach, that's great. You know, you call it the craziest thing that you ever did, but I know that deep down, you know, under that old football coach's exterior, those girls hold a soft spot in your heart. What's one or two lessons that you learned from being around those girls for those 3 or 4 seasons that you coached them?
I think more than anything, I was amazed at how competitive they were. Yeah. I mean, they were really competitive, and they hated to lose, and they hated to look bad doing it. Yeah. They just really did, and I'd coach football enough to know the guys and all, you know, a lot of them, they do a pretty good job of hiding their emotions. Okay, girls don't hide their emotions. Okay? Right. If they're not happy, you know it. Yeah. If they're happy, you know it. And they were pretty much up front. They thought I was out of line or I had done something. They'd pretty much tell me. Yeah. Guys wouldn't do that. Yeah. It was kind of a different experience, and I kind of enjoyed it, really.
Well, one of the stars of that story, Terry Lynn Peacock, was you forced her to play catcher, and she did a great job there. But she actually came back, and she was at one time the head softball coach at T.R. Miller. She's since given that up to another coach, but she's right now the head volleyball coach. And so what does it mean to have someone like Terry Lynn come back home, in a sense, and impact girls' lives like you impacted hers?
It's great. It really is. And I don't mind telling you, I hired her. When Greg White had coached volleyball and softball for us for a number of years, and when Greg got out of education and went into business, immediately I knew who we were going to hire, and I called Terry Lynn immediately and got permission to do that and get her hired and all that kind of stuff. So I take a lot of pride in the fact that I did hire her, and she's terrific. Yeah. And has done a terrific job, and really with our volleyball team has just done a great job. Remember, her mother was our first volleyball coach.
I had forgotten that, but you're right. Yeah,
she was our very first volleyball coach in the mid-'90s. A funny story about her mother, Sharon. I was told, hey, we're going to start playing volleyball. You know, I don't even know how many folks on a team. I mean, I don't know anything about volleyball, you know. I said, okay. And so I knew that Sharon had some PE background and stuff, so I went to her and said, would you even consider doing that? And she said, yeah, I think I might be interested in doing that. And so I just remember our first conversation, and my first question I asked, do you know how many people are on a team? That was my first question. So that's where the volleyball team started. So Terry Lynn's kind of got it a little bit above that right now. They're really good.
No doubt. Well, I mean, yeah, the girls' sports at Miller is definitely a cut above. I mean, the successful volleyball teams, softball teams, basketball teams, track and field, but all that was laid by the foundation that you and Miss Sharon Peacock laid. So we appreciate that. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. It definitely helps us in the ratings, and it also makes it easier for other folks to find the podcast. And as always, a big thank you to producer and editor Carrie Wolf. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Avizo Group. If you want to know more about who we are and what we do, you can visit our website at avizogroup.com. That's AVIZO group.com. You can also check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.